In this video, we're going to try to continue with essentially the lessons learned from the Vietnam War era. This is a very important area for guerrilla warfare. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from the Vietnam War, and you should be studying this now. Okay, read through what happened, what was encountered, how the Viet Cong, the NVA did things, how the U.S. responded. The U.S. also employed guerrilla warfare against the communists. So those are areas you should be studying also. There's a lot of good info in there that militias should know, along with other resistance movements around the world that are battling against the globalists, the internationalists, whatever you want to call them. Now, with today's video, we're going to talk about the M72 Law Rocket Series, the LAW, Light Anti-Tank Weapon. This came out late 50s, early 1960s, was employed heavily in Vietnam. It was copied by other countries. Some countries copied it exactly, such as Britain and Finland. The Soviets made their own version of this in the mid-1960s. It was the RPG-18 series, which, if I remember correctly, was like a 62 or 64 millimeter warhead. The M72 series employs a 66 millimeter warhead, a heat rocket, HEAT, high explosive anti-tank rocket, a shape charge. The Soviets improved their version around 1985 to the RPG-22 series, and they increased the diameter of the rocket to 74 millimeter. And that is what is currently being used by the Russian Army. There are versions of this all over the world. They all operate essentially the same. There's only slight differences. But this is a disposable, one-shot use weapon. Now, what I'm using for my reference here is STP-21-1-SMCT, Soldier's Manual of Common Tasks, Skill Level 1, edition October 1985. Now, the tasks I'm going to cover include Task 071-318-2201, prepare an M72A2 law for firing, and restore an M72A2 law to carrying configuration if the rocket is not fired. Task 071-318-2202, engage targets with an M72A2 law. And task 071-318-2203, apply immediate action to correct a malfunction on an M72A2 law. Now, this is not going to be broken up easily where you can put in breaks and you're going from one task immediately into the next. It's going to be kind of mixed together the same way it would be if you would employ this in combat. Now, the first thing you do with any anti-tank weapon, you visually inspect it. You're inspecting the tube for any cracks, any dents, any missing pieces that could interfere with the rocket deploying, or with a crack or a piece missing could vent some of the hot gases and flames from the rocket going out into the firer, injuring them. You're checking that the end caps are in place. They were obviously missing off of this one. They disappeared a long time ago. You're also checking your fire control section on top. Make sure that that is not damaged. You're checking the rubber boots over the trigger lever here and the detent lever to make sure they are not damaged. This one clearly is over the detent. You would also check your sights, your rear sight, which is hidden inside this housing, your front sight, which is hidden underneath this dust cover. You cannot check those sights until the rocket is fully extended, so you're just making sure that those areas right now are not damaged. Now, in order to employ this rocket, you're in your firing position, you're getting ready to use it. You could be on an ambush, it could be in combat, you know, and infantry fighting vehicles are coming your direction. And you got to take them out before they dismount their infantry. On the back, well, you will remove this from your rucksack, from your shoulder, wherever you have it, from sitting next to you in a fighting position. Grab it on the back here, grab hold of this pin, remove it, freeing the back cover, open the back cover up all the way, it'll swing down. When that happens, it'll free the back of the carrying strap. On the front here, you remove the front cap, which will also drop away the shoulder strap on the ground. On the back here, you see there's two little milled areas. Put your fingers on those, pull the rocket apart, and pull it all the way back until it locks into place. Check that it's locked into place by try pushing it to get forward a little bit. If it does move forward, grab it on the back, yank it back all the way to extend it, make sure it's in the locked position. When it's locked open, your rear sight and your front sight are freed. You would bring it up to your shoulder at that point. You would pull forward on the arming handle. Check behind the weapon. Check your backblast area, as it says on here. Check the backblast area, make sure there's no friendlies in that area. If there are, yell out. This is what we were told in basic. Yell out backblast area clear as loud as you can, because in combat, rounds are going to be going off. There's going to be explosions. They're not going to hear you if you use a normal voice. You must speak extremely loudly, so you have to yell it out. If you're in an ambush and you're getting ready to use this, signal for the person to move out of the way, being as quiet as possible. Now, after the backblast area is clear, you then sight through the sights here on your target, and then squeeze your trigger lever and the weapon should fire. Now we'll go to the task of engaging a target, and mainly on this task it is using the sights. If you can see here, on this rear sight is a peep sight. There's a small hole in it. You look through that to your front sight. This will be hard to see, but I'll try to get as best I can. In the front sight here, you see you have a center post that is marked off. It is gradiated from 50 to 300 meters, so 325 meters or so. There is a line every 25 meters. You have numbers every 50 meters. So the very top up here you see is 50, down here you have 300, and then below that would be 325. Now you have two curved lines on the sides. You do not use those. Those are obsolete and apply to vehicles that are no longer being used around the world. You also have, if you can see here, little crosses on either side. Those are aiming points for moving targets. Now, if your target is stationary, you use that center line with the numbers. You sight in on center mass or where you want to hit on your target. Now, if your target's moving, it will be based on how fast it's going, where your aim point is. With the M72, they say if it is traveling 5 miles per hour or less, it is a slow-moving target. Greater than 5 miles per hour, it is fast-moving. So on a slow-moving target, you would use the little cross on the correct side from whichever direction the target's coming from. We'll say it's coming from over here. So we take the cross on that side, we put it on the center mass of the target, and then we would fire. If it is a fast-moving target, we would take that little cross and we put it on the very front edge of the hull, or the very front edge of the target. That is our aim point, and then we would fire. Now, if there is a malfunction with the M72 when you're firing it. Immediately re-squeeze the trigger bar. If it still does not fire, return the arming handle back to a safe position. Remove it from your shoulder. Collapse it by pressing the detent. You want to collapse it at least 4 inches. And then, without putting your hand or body either behind the tube or in front of the tube, extend it all the way back out again till it's locked into position. Then you replace the WROL rocket back on your shoulder. You recheck your black blast area. You arm it once again, aim it, and then try firing it. If it still does not fire, return it to safe, remove it from your shoulder, collapse the rocket down, lay it on the ground next to you, retrieve the next rocket that you have available, and use that to engage your target. Now, there's always the possibility it didn't fire because it's a hang fire. Your rocket motor ignited, but it's burning extremely slowly. For some reason, the propellant hasn't ignited as quickly as it's supposed to. That's why you keep this front end aiming downrange towards the enemy, because there's always the possibility that that motor might kick in even when it's collapsed like this, and that rocket will come flying out. Now, should make this note quick. With misfired rockets, do not leave them behind for the enemy. Destroy them. Collapse your tube in if possible. You want to collapse a tube greater than 4 inches. It says in the manual, greater than 4 inches from its fully extended position. Everything is out of alignment in the rocket and in the firing system up here where the rocket should not engage. But if it's a hang fire, you still got that possibility. It's just burning, waiting to go off. But you take your block of explosives for destroying the rocket, you put it over where the warhead would be, ignite the explosives, whatever way you have it set up for going off. When it goes off, it'll set off the rocket, set off the warhead, which will destroy the rocket. It'll destroy the tube. Now, in Vietnam, in the beginning of the war, U.S. troops, after they used the launchers, they would just take them and they would throw them to the ground next to them. They would discard them because that's how they were trained. Well, the VC, being extremely ingenious, they realized you have a 66 millimeter tube here. Well, you essentially have a 60 millimeter mortar. You take your expended tube that's not damaged. This has holes in it, this would not work. Take a board with a nail in the center, attach it to the back of the tube. You would use this as your launcher, get the angle that you estimate you need, drop your 60 millimeter mortar down the front of the tube, and it would go off as a mortar tube. I do not know how many rounds this would fire as a mortar before it would come apart. I'm not aware of that. It doesn't say it in any of the materials I've come across. So the U.S. military in Vietnam would tell the troops, after they started encountering the WROL rocket mortars here, to destroy the tubes. Now, you would do it by either dropping a grenade down inside and blowing it up in the center here, if possible. And it was preferred that it was a captured enemy grenade for that purpose. Or you would crush it using a large rock, a tire on the vehicle, or run it over with the track on the vehicle. You're trying to damage the tube, destroy it. You're also trying to damage the firing system up here. You're trying to destroy the front and rear sights. Now, this morning I came across a video where people are actually reactivating these. They're using them to fire fireworks. I'm not going to give you the link. I'm not going to give you the title of the video. You'll have to find the stuff on your own. But basically, they would replace the primers and that stuff in them, replace some of the tubing and that stuff inside, and load it with a fireworks rocket inside, they'd fire it with the trigger and it would go flying out the tube and you'd be launching fireworks. But just remember, if you're reactivating this in any way, you run the risk of violating a federal law, and you can go to prison a very, very long time. So be aware of that. Now, to put this thing back into carry configuration, you didn't fire it. Press your detent up here after you return your arming lever back to, or arming handle back to safe position. Start collapsing the tube in. Watch on the front here for that dust cover. As soon as it starts appearing, push down on the front sight, put the dust cover over the very edge of it to get it started. Then go back to your rear sight, fold that down so it'll go in the housing, and then close it up. Replace your rear cover. Taking your pins, put the longer pin on the launcher. The smaller pin goes through the corresponding hole on the rear cap. You put the rear cap, the front cap back on, and then reset the shoulder strap, connecting it over the rear cap. And then it's ready for transport again. Now, how this would look in combat firing. My target is that direction. He's coming into my kill zone. I pick it up. I've already done an inspection. Remove the rear pin, remove the rear cap, front cap, shoulder strap. Extend it out fully till it clicks in place. Make sure it's fully extended. I'm trying to push it in a little bit. Bring it up to my shoulder. Take the leg that's on the firing side. That leg forward. It's the same for if you're standing or kneeling. If you're doing this in the prone position, make sure you are to the side at approximately 45-degree angle from your weapon. Check your back blast area if anyone's there. Back blast area clear! Get into position. Arming lever forward, sight in, get your distance. My fingers on top over the trigger lever. Fire. And the weapon goes off. Or at least it should. If it doesn't, you go through and do your malfunction procedures. Now, the purpose of this video is primarily for reenactors, but I have also found out with doing some checking that people are using these for airsofting and also paintball. They're going through reactivating the firing section up here, and they're connecting it in to fire soft projectiles out of them using very small amounts of propellant, probably some type of CO2 cartridge. If it's a paintball, I'm sure they're launching some type of homemade paint round downrange for use against like fortifications and that stuff during their games. But you have some basic information now on employing the M72 series rocket. As I said, this is still in the inventory around the world. These came into use during Vietnam. They were extremely usable or extremely useful, and they're still being used today. They were continued. They were supposed to have been discontinued in the late 1980s, early 1990s, and replaced with the M136, also known as the AT4, which is an 84 millimeter heat rocket system, another high explosive anti-tank rocket system that can puncture modern main battle tanks. In Afghanistan, people complained about the AT4 being too heavy, so the military went back, signed some new contracts, got upgraded versions of the M72 to the troops, and they were using these against Taliban and Al-Qaeda positions up in the mountains. Now, I do have an M136 AT4 training tube. If you want to see a video on it, click the like button below the video here and let me know in the comment sections. If I get enough people that want to see that video, I will do it within a week, maybe 2 weeks from now. But if people aren't interested in this video, they don't like it, they don't want to see the follow-up to it, I won't do it. I won't waste my time. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember essayons.